Sometimes when people ask me to describe my own personal faith or belief, I often like to share with them a pie chart, how I describe my faith. And this is my pie chart. I'm saying I have a lot of doubt, and my faith is maybe that small. I also say my unbelief and then my belief. The good news about today's gospel is that the gospel would say that's a lot. That's a lot of faith. The key message we hear in Mark's gospel today is that a little faith, a tiny amount of faith, can yield a great harvest when we allow God to do the work through us. In Mark's gospel, chapter 4, verses 26 to 34, we hear two stories of contrasting the smallest of a seed and the greatness of the harvest. The first, Jesus says to the crowd, "This isn't how it is with the reign of God. Someone scattered seed on the ground. It all seeds sprout and they grow without knowing what happens. The soil produces the blade and then the ear and finally the ripe wheat. When the crop is ready, they go out and wield the harvest with a sickle." And Jesus went on to say, "What else shall we compare the reign of God? What image helps us understand the reign of God? It is like this tiny mustard seed. When planted, it's the smallest of all the earth's seeds, yet once it's sown, it's one of the largest shrubs, big enough for birds to nest." And by means of this, he was explaining in parables the message in which ways other people could not understand. He spoke by way of parable, of story. That farmer, the people who sow seeds, that process of growing crops in that first story, it reminds us that we are not in control of growth. Growth happens in God's time, not ours. We can't force growth to happen. That first message of today's gospel is let it happen. Let God do the work through us. The second, the parable of a mustard seed. Mustard seeds you can buy in the grocery, they're really tiny. If you put them in your hand, they would definitely be much smaller than what I said of my own faith. Very little faith I think I have in this pie chart. This barely visible seed grows into a great shrub, at the service to be of service for others. The birds of the air nest in its branches. God is in charge of the process of growing. Let it happen, let it be. Be an instrument of that growth. This week, the gospel reminds us that we are not the judge of our faith. God is. And we may judge ourselves to say, I have very little faith. God says, it doesn't matter. All you need is just a small amount to do great things, to serve others with great love. So this week, let us let go of our own self-criticism, our judgment about how we see or view our faith. Let God be God, because the gospel reminds us for God only very little is required. This attitude of openness and willingness and letting growth happen. Allow God to grow in us and through us this week. We may not see it. It may be just about letting go and just being ourselves, trusting that God is working through us. Give others and ourselves that space and time to let God be God and grow in us with that very tiny amount of faith. Our yes that grows into the greatness of God's love. Amen.